Welcome to another Exploration Saturday. My name is Sarah, and today we have the program Meeting Sacagawea. Now, you've probably heard and learned about Sacagawea in school, and you might actually recognize her by another name, Sacagawea. And so the first question we should look at is, how do you say her name? And the answer to that is, we don't know, actually. No one knows for sure how we said and say her name. From the journals, the captains actually spelled her name many different ways, with a G and with a J. So this woman, who plays such an important role on the expedition, Sacagawea, she joined the captains. She traveled with them all the way to the ocean with her newborn baby and her husband, and she brought so many skills and value to the expedition. And 200 years later, we still don't know how to say her name. There's different theories, different arguments from different native tribes, from different scholars and historians. For this program, I'm going to say Sacagawea because that's what's used by the National Park Service, spelt with that G sound. But then again, I could be wrong. So for the very first question, we don't even know how to say Sacagawea's name properly. But that doesn't mean she was any less valuable. She was a huge value on the expedition. So the captains met Sacagawea and her husband Toussaint Charbonneau in the winter of 1804-1805 in present-day North Dakota. And her husband was a French Canadian. He was working as an interpreter, a fur trapper, a trader, and he met the captains, and the captains also met his wife, Sacagawea, and they realized she was from the Shoshone tribe, which is a tribe in the west along the Rocky Mountains near present-day Idaho. And they knew they were hoping to meet the Shoshone tribe, and they knew they would need to buy and purchase horses from the Shoshone tribe. So they really needed Sacagawea to come with them and work as an interpreter, because she knew the Shoshone language, so she could help translate the different languages so that when they met the Shoshone tribe, they were able to get supplies that they needed and to be able to talk to the leaders too. So one of Sacagawea's most important roles was as a translator, an interpreter. Another really important skill that she had was a cultural advisor. So while the captains and all the men were traveling west along the Missouri River, Sacagawea recognized different tribes. She explained different tribe cultures to the captains. She also knew the land, so she knew what was safe to eat for plants and herbs. She even knew how to use these things for medicine to treat different injuries and sicknesses. And she shared that knowledge with the captains. So she knew the area. While they're traveling west, she was able to recognize landmarks, and that reassured the captains that they were on the right track, that they're heading to the west, they were going to meet the mountains, and then hopefully reach the ocean. So we know from the journals that they did meet the Shoshone tribe, that even the chief of the Shoshone tribe was Sacagawea's brother, which was great because Sacagawea hadn't seen her family for many years because she was kidnapped as a young girl by the Hidatsa tribe who lived in North Dakota. So she was very happy to be reunited with her family, to see her brother again, and so that had to be a very heartwarming experience for her. After the Shoshone tribe, she continued with the expedition to the ocean, which is along the Oregon and Washington coast. And while there, she did another thing. She actually voted, and at this time, women were not allowed to vote. So it's a really important part of American history that we have this Native woman who was allowed to vote on where the captains should place the winter camp for that year. So the captains asked all the members of the group, which included Sacagawea, who was a Native woman. It also included York, who was an enslaved African man at the time, to vote. And that's a really important part of American history, because at that time, the women, slaves, they were not allowed to vote. And it's going to be another 100 years before they were able to really gain that rights that they should have. So that's another important part of history. Her vote was included, her voice was included on where the winter camp should be for that winter. And so she really played an important role, as a translator, a cultural advisor. Another one was as a symbol of peace, because you have this really big group of these strange men from a strange country traveling through these lands. And so, of course, the Native people saw this, and they're very wary. They were very worried to approach these weird men. But when they saw Sacagawea with her baby, John Baptiste, they knew this wasn't a war party, because a war party never traveled with women and children. So the people felt comfortable approaching the captains to talk with them and to find out what was going on. Why was this big group of strange men in these strange uniforms traveling through their lands? So a symbol of peace, translator, cultural advisor. She played wore many different hats during the expedition. And she has lots of fun stories. She pops up every once in a while in the journals. Like, for instance, in May, the captains were walking on shore. Sacagawea was in a boat with her husband and a few other men. It was some rough waves, and the boat actually started to tip back and forth. And all while the men are panicking and freaking out, and supplies like maybe some food, maybe their gunpowder for their hunting rifles, candles, soap, maybe their writing equipment, is all starting to fall out of the boat. The Sacagawea kept her head. She probably had her baby with her too, but she kept her head and she collected all these supplies out of the water as they were falling out. She put them back in the boat. And these are important supplies, because once the supplies are gone, they're gone. There's no grocery store to buy more supplies. So she saved many of the items from going overboard and sinking into the river. We also know when they made it to the Oregon coast, there was a beached whale. They received news that a whale had been beached on the coast. And she told the captains, I've traveled 2,000 miles. I'm going to go to the coast because I've never seen a whale before, and I want to see this creature. So I am going with you to the coast. So we definitely know she was a very, probably pretty cool lady, is what I'm guessing. So we know that's another story. So there's many little stories popped up if you know where to look. It's really cool to learn about Sacagawea. And so for the craft today, we're going to make a sun catcher, because one, this is a very fun thing to do in the spring and summer, is a beautiful sun catcher made from these glass beads. And we also know from the journal they had glass beads, and there was different colors of beads, kind of like this one I'm holding right here, this strand of beads. And the blue beads were very valuable. So I'm going to use some reds, some blues, some greens for our sun catcher. I'm going to show you how to make it, and it's super easy. It's a beautiful thing to hang in your window to remind you of the important role that Sacagawea played in the expedition. And for your supplies, all you need is some wax paper to put on the table so you don't get glue everywhere. You need a round, shallow bowl, so maybe a lid from an old soda pop. I have actually an old CD case that I'm going to use. So yeah, grab the lid off of your soda that you ordered from the restaurant. Maybe find just a little CD case. It just has to be shallow, so not very deep. And you're going to grab some glue. And then the only other thing you need are these glass beads, things that you might put in the bottom of a fish bowl, or maybe a vase with flowers. You can find these at a dollar store, or they're kind of any craft store will do. Grab all those beads right there. And these have a flat bottom, so they're round on top, flat on the bottom. And this is super easy. You just take some glue, and that lid of maybe from your pop or from your CD, we're just gonna lay a layer of glue all over the bottom here. And I also picked out the glass beads to use for this craft because it's also reminded me of another story from the expedition. Let's see if I can get my glue working. You know what? We're just going to take the lid off. The glass beads reminded me of a story from the expedition. Now, if you remember, Lewis and Clark, they were real people, and sometimes they made good decisions, sometimes they made bad decisions. because they were human, and sometimes things from history really upset us today because it wasn't fair what they did. So we know from a story when they were on the Oregon coast that Sacagawea had this beautiful belt of blue beads. And blue beads were very valuable. This was a prized possession, like gold and rubies and diamonds. And she loved this blue belt. But then when a leader from the Chinook tribe visited the captains, he had this coat of sea otter fur, sea otter pelts, this beautiful coat. And the captains really wanted that coat of sea otter, made from sea otter. And they really, really wanted that coat, but that leader wouldn't sell it. He wouldn't trade it for anything until he saw Sacagawea's beautiful belt of blue beads. And the leader said, I want that belt. And so we don't know exactly if the captains forced Sacagawea to give up her beautiful belt of blue beads, if she had any choice in the decision, but she did have to give up that beautiful belt of blue beads and gave it to the captains so that they could purchase this coat of sea otter fur. So really, that was an unfair thing, and I don't know how Sacagawea felt, but I know if it was myself, I would not be happy. But in the 1800s, women really did not have a lot of rights. So it's even more important today that we really, fight for people to have rights and equality, and to just listen to different voices and different stories so we can learn about all sorts of different people from around the world. So that's another story from the expedition. Now another more fun story that we know from the expedition is that afterwards, when the captains headed home, we know Captain Clark actually wrote a letter to Toussaint Charbonneau, Sacagawea's husband, and he asked that they would visit him in St. Louis. Captain Clark was living in St. Louis, and he really wanted to see Sacagawea again. He wanted to see the little baby boy, John Baptiste, which he nicknamed Pomp, and he really wanted to see them again because it's been a while since he's seen them since the expedition. And so they actually traveled Sacagawea, Toussaint Charbonneau, the baby, who's actually a toddler now, all went to St. Louis to see Captain Clark. And we know from the journals that John Baptiste, the little boy, actually stayed to go to school in St. Louis, and Captain Clark looked after him while he was in St. Louis. And John Baptiste, the little baby boy, has a really cool story. He grows up and does amazing things and really lives an adventurous life. But we'll have to save that for another program. So as I'm talking here, guys, I laid some glue into my case here. And then all you do, you add your beads in whatever designs you want in the glue. It kind of makes a mess. That's why we have that wax paper laid down, because we don't want the glue getting on the table. And all you do, you just go around. I think I'm going to add maybe some reds on the edges. And you just kind of do a circular pattern. And you kind of just fill in those loose spaces here. There we go. And the marbles kind of move around in the glue, but that's okay. There we go. And you just fill that up with marbles. So I'm halfway done here. And then you just set this in the window in the sun to let it dry. Now we use kind of maybe 1/8 of an inch of glue, so it's going to take a few days for it to dry. But when it's all done, the glue keeps the marbles together. It kind of have like a glue backing to keep it all together. And then all you do, I have either a little toothpick, I have one of those shish kebab skewers, and you find a spot near the top of your sun catcher. You poke a little hole with that, kind of roll it around a little bit, and then you just need some string that we're going to push through the hole there. And use this to push the string through, and then you knot it at the top here, and that's something you can hang in your window to remind you of Sacagawea. So I'm going to finish this process. I'm going to let it glue. We'll have all the worksheets for this activity in the comments below here on Facebook. If you haven't yet, be sure to join our Kids Club where you get a little members badge and you get an explorer's coin and invites to all the activities we do here at the center. And of course, if you have questions, please let me know and feel free to share the pictures of your sun catchers in the comments below too. Until next time, guys.